Hi everyone. If you're new to sewing or quilting, you might be confused about bias. You hear it, but you don't really know what it means. Probably like when I was watching our kids play soccer and they'd call offsides. What are they talking about? Well, let me explain to you very simply what bias is. It starts with how fabric is woven. Fabric is woven on a loom, and when you buy your fabric, oftentimes on the edge, there's selvage. Okay, and sometimes the selvage has colored dots on it, which helps you pick out colors to coordinate with it. But here we have selvage to salvage. Okay, this is called the cross grain. The cross grain has a little bit of stretch, but not too much. The length grain, I'm gonna put this up here, runs from here down to here. That's the thread that's on the loom that the cross grain is woven across, okay? Now, the length of grain, again, the thread that's on the loom, has no stretch, none, zero, zip. It goes nowhere, okay? So then the bias is actually when you cut on a 45-degree angle. It has a ton of stretch. So let's go through the stretchability of it. All right, length of grain, no stretch. Cross grain, a little bit of stretch. Bias, a ton of stretch. Let me see here. I mean, look at that, holy smokes. Okay, why do you care? You care because if you're making, say, a block like this, you don't want the bias on the outside edge. You want the straight of grain. Now, let's say your fabric's already been cut into. How can you tell where the bias is? Take a look at this little triangle right here. One side is going to be a cross grain, one side is going to be straight of grain, and then one side's going to be bias. So let's figure out here what's going on. I know that this is the straight of grain, not bias, or the length of grain. And you can even tell because it's fraying a little bit, or you can look at the threads itself. And then here is the bias, it's cut across. But I'm curious, is this cross grain or is it length of grain? No stretch, okay? So that is length of grain. Then this is cross grain because it has a little bit of stretch. And then, now watch this. You can see why bias is such a disaster if it gets on the outside edge. Look at that. Yikes! So let's take a look at this little flying geese unit. It's a cute little unit, and it does have bias in it, but the outside edges are all on the straight of grain, which is either the cross grain or the length grain. Just means the threads are going straight across. This cute little unit goes right into the star and many other places too. So let's deal with the background triangle, and that's a quarter square triangle. And how I do it is I cut the size that the pattern tells me to cut, and I go like this, and then I'm going to have to turn this to work around my camera. I could normally just turn my body. I'm going to go like this. And now I've got a quarter square triangle because it's been cut into quarters, all right? And that is for this little piece right here, okay, right here. Then for the half square triangles, you cut X measurement, whatever it tells you in the pattern. Let me get this out of the way. And then I'm going to cut corner to corner, and I'm getting a half square triangle. And see, what you can see here, you guys, is that they both have a 90 degree, but they are very, very different. Because when this bias is sewn up here, you press, and then this bias is sewn up here, you end up with a flying geese when all the edges on the outside are on grain. I love this. Once you learn it, commit to it, and you are good to go.